Hello, my favorite Poodites. How are you? I am fine, and welcome to Pood Paw Prince Presents. Oh, this'll be so much fun. Nautilus is an unpublished work from our illustrious cadre of writers. A story of a submarine on its way to an encounter with a destiny they have yet to write. Come with us now and join our crew on the adventure of a lifetime. Nautilus, a novel by Scott Thorson and David Mizialowski. Book 1, Linchpin. I understand at last that my true vocation, my sole purpose in life, was to hunt down this disturbing monster and rid the world of it. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The thought crossed my mind to light this candle when we got there, but I had no authority to do so. My writ was temporary and provisional, just 22 hours. 22 hours until we met the mechs, and we didn't even know what they looked like. I don't know why the Navy put me in charge of this baby. Maybe because of my name, George Rickover Hansen. And this ship, my ship, for less than a day anyway, bears the venerable name Nautilus. We steamed through the South China Sea, slowly, near the surface, cutting the waterline, cunning and careful, an alert shark. 30 knots, plying those cold waters, vigilant. Nautilus. She was the last of the antimatter submarines of the United States Navy, commissioned on the 150th anniversary of her namesake, the nuclear Nautilus. Decommissioned only 5 years later, when they showed up. Everybody called them mechs, even though they never named themselves. They have never communicated with us at all. In fact, they have never done much of anything except build machinery for unknown purposes and harvest resources for unknown reasons. They are not friendly, they are not unfriendly, they are indifferent. They are as silent as God and probably almost as powerful. They do not seem to care about us at all. They care only about what they can take from us. But the world is paralyzed by the fear of what they might do, given their extraordinary technological prowess. The USS Nautilus is the pride of the Navy. 500 feet long, with a beam of 50 feet and a draft of 35 feet. A crew of 200 could fill her, and she has enough firepower to take out the world many times over. But this is her last trip, and only 10 of us are aboard. The Nautilus is fully armed and ready for battle, and that is why the notion nags at me to light this candle when we get there. I think the Navy put me in charge because my great-grandfather was considered the father of the nuclear Navy. I can't think of any other reason that they would put me in charge of the Navy's antimatter successor to its nuclear fleet. I am not a real captain. I'm not necessarily even a person. I think I am some sort of symbol, like stars on the flag. Sometimes I think that government bureaucrats are as inscrutable as the mechs, and probably more dangerous. My parents were proud of the Rickover name, but not of their auto mechanic son devoting his days to mentally communicating with the carware of self-aware cars to assist in their self-repair and also to offer them therapy and mental care. Many cars nowadays have self-esteem issues, as do I. A car will cry. Is this what I was meant to do in life? To ferry around wetware like a slave, serving entities that are significantly less intelligent than I am? Don't I have rights? Don't I rate? I can relate. 100 years ago, my day job would have staggered the imagination of the ordinary person. Today, it is the province of a plebe. And that is why I think my parents were disappointed in me, or at least I always felt that they were. They never verbally expressed their disappointment, but I could feel it in the marrow of my bones, a cold and clammy sensation of implicit rejection, a certain standoffishness on their part that always chilled my heart. If only Mom and Dad were alive today. But they aren't. I don't know what they would think about this. I don't know why I was asked to do this job beyond the venerability of my name. I don't think the government asked me to do it because it considers me important. Just the opposite. I think that the government asked me to do it precisely because it considers me unimportant, expendable, an auto mechanic with a great name, but an auto mechanic for all that. An auto mechanic on what I guess is a suicide mission. My gut tells me that, even though the president didn't when he handed me the keys to this car and manfully pumped my hand with his synthetic hand, "Be the hero, Captain," he had said, with a crinkly grin and an enigmatic twinkle in his eye. The USS Nautilus is a fast ship, but we were keeping it slow and on the surface, cruising like a placid metal whale headed towards the main complex of the mechs. For the last year, they have been building a huge structure in the South Pacific, 50 miles in diameter. It is a multifaceted, Mandela-like complex, a gigantic labyrinthine glyph embedded like a Baroque brand in the bed of the ocean. From images made by satellites and by subs sent into the region, we could see that the structure breached the seafloor and extended downward into the womb of the earth, and that it rose almost 2 miles above the waterline to touch the gowns of heaven. I could already see it, though we were still many, many miles away from it. Its bristling, multifaceted superstructure climbing towards the clouds was enticing electrical storms, jagged forks of lightning, down into its grasping arms and claws. The spires of Mordor and Mount Doom. The rigid priapic spires seduced the soft pillowy clouds, drawing them down, and then the clouds roiled and funneled when penetrated. Blinding forks of lightning were ejaculated, followed by concussive peals of thunder. Then the clouds dispersed, regrouped, and then this cosmic conjoining started all over again. This breathing giant, black jutting towers. The towers offered no aesthetic pleasure, at least none that a human could appreciate. This was alien architecture. There was something wrong about how these forms fit together. They were a careless chaos, a sky-cantering calamity. The structure betrayed a certain randomness that was perhaps belied by a secret underlying implicit order, like metal shavings randomly strewn upon a magnet. But this is an implicit order to the magnetic force regardless of the seeming randomness of the shavings on the magnet. I believe that something similar is true of this superstructure. Its seemingly chaotic and even ugly design obeys an implicit order that is cordoned off from human knowledge, and is perhaps unknowable to us, even in principle. The fact that the mechs are evidently in possession of profound secrets about the world that are unknown and perhaps even unknowable to humans is precisely what makes them so frightening. It would almost be better if they had ever evinced actual malice towards us. In that case, we would have known where we stood, and we would have had some inkling of what we were up against. As I think about it, it is their utter indifference towards us that is so scary. It bruises the human ego. It dethrones us further from the center of the world, the place where we once believed that we cozily cuddled until Copernicus cruelly evicted us. Whatever it is that they are doing here, we don't matter. It has a little bit of the feeling of finding out that God didn't create creation for humans at all, but maybe for beetles. Or maybe he just digs empty space, since that is what most of reality is. The ship had broken the waterline, and I stood top deck on the sail wearing a parka, and I stared at the towering monstrosity composing eerie booming and thudding alien music with the faraway sky and producing distant celestial spiderwebs of elegiac electricity. The sight was both awe-inspiring and unnerving. The surging Nautilus churned up spume. The wind cut my face, and the ocean spray spat upon it 1,000,000,000,000 particles of water. But it was sunny, and a certain pale warmth fought through the chill of the wind, until we advanced and came under the frigid shallow of the artless tatterdemalion tower of the mechs. Then all went dark and cold, my blood most of all. Despite my parka, I felt almost naked out here. The sail of the Nautilus was only a tiny bump compared with historical subs. The hull was perfectly round, made for deep water, yet tapered for speed. I had studied her in depth for weeks before we left. She was fast, not the fastest sub ever, but she could do over 50 knots on the surface and 70 knots submerged, officially. An exceptionally scintillating flash of light from the mech's tower blinded me for a moment, and fear cut through me. I closed my eyes, and an afterimage of the light was burned on my eyeballs. Alarms sounded below deck. I scrambled for the hatch, padding for it because I remained temporarily blinded. When I was at last able to open my eyes and see again, everything inside the vessel seemed normal. The hatch had automatically closed behind me, and the warm air of the sub banished the cold outside. "Ship rigged for dive, Captain," I heard as I felt the Nautilus list drastically and our speed markedly increased. Damn the official velocity statistics, this baby was very fast. "Remote eyes deployed, Captain." Speaking was Willie, as I called him, Willem Wade, one of the few fully trained Navy personnel on the ship. The rest of our skeleton crew quickly got their marching orders from Willie. Everyone aboard was a volunteer, even me. As brave as I may sound sometimes, I'm not. I live on the other side of the ocean from the island of Brave. It's a small and lonely island, I hear. I don't know why I was so nervous. There was no indication that the mechs were going to do anything at all. By all indications, they remained cosmically indifferent to us. Of course, humans, generally speaking, are cosmically indifferent to ants, but that doesn't mean we don't step on them from time to time. We just do so without even knowing it, which must provide scant comfort to those crushed and writhing exoskeletons littered under our savage footfalls. But so far as we knew, all submarines and other craft that had gotten within a certain distance of the alien tower had always returned safely. Or so we had been told. For some reason I didn't feel so confident now about what we had been told. Was it a line of crap? Fear made my mind race with awful possibilities, and I had to close my eyes and dig my fingernails into my upper arms to make myself stop thinking for a moment. "Radar showing a pressure wave coming this way," Willie announced. "Nothing to worry about. Sam says that an earthquake happened, and it produced a tsunami." As always, Willie was speaking in an emotionless, business-as-usual monotone. Were it not for the sweat slathering his face, I would have thought he was just chatting with me over a beer. The sight of his sweat chilled my own perspiration, as well as my heart. This was trouble. Immediately, I connected the quake with the flash of light that had momentarily blinded me. "Willie, won't we get hit by the tsunami?" "We're in the middle of the ocean, Captain. For us, it'll be a speed bump. We're still getting data from around the world, but it looks big." Willie's head was jacked into the SAM system, jokingly called Systems Admin Man, the brains of this boat. Willie was absorbing a different tsunami, a tsunami of data lashing wirelessly into the software installed in his brain. I felt the whole ship sway and got a little seasick for a moment. Then the swaying stopped. After several moments of intense, silent, and nerve-wracking waiting, Willie announced, "Pressure wave has passed. Incoming data indicates a magnitude 9.2 quake. Real big. Tsunami will hit New Zealand in approximately 4 hours and Chile in 5 hours. Evacuation notices are going out now." Willie paused for a moment and said, somewhat shakily, "I was lucky we were here." He turned and focused his eyes on me. His eyes, their intensity softened, and he seemed suddenly pale and very thoughtful. "We were able to send out to the world about as advanced a notice as anyone could, Captain, and we may have saved millions of lives." He abruptly turned away from me, and then the distant and impersonal look of the committed computer tech returned to his eyes, and the blank, impersonal yet fierce expression of concentration required of all techs was back on his face, rejoining the sweat that slathered it and the veins that pounded like trip hammers in his forehead and in the taut cords of his neck. I stared at Willie for a moment, realizing that I was looking at a hero, a real one. It's dangerous for a man to process that much data all at once. It was an awe-inspiring yet simple moment. He probably didn't think that he was a hero. He thought that he was just doing his job, but we, and the rest of the world, were damned lucky that he was here today. The rest of us, myself especially, were jokes. Well, hell, maybe not the engineer, and certainly not Tiernan, who wanted my job and was bitter that she had not gotten it. My arms were still wrapped around myself, like someone marooned in a straitjacket of fear, and I again dug my fingernails into my upper arms to try and banish my racing thoughts. I again thought about that lonely island named Brave, and how far away it seemed and impossible to find. With effort, I pried my fingernails out of my arms, and I actually lightly slapped myself in the face to bring myself back to attention. Manning up as best I could, I addressed Willie. "Pull up the remote eyes display, will you, Willie?" Some rotating three-dimensional displays popped into existence inside my head, and the software welded to my brain. Everything outside looked normal. The mech's superstructure was intact, and lightning was dancing and flashing as normal about the tips of its spires, that spidering and forking display winking in and out of existence. The tsunami-roiled waters had settled back down to a briny and aqueous plasticity, that gelatinous, life-filled amniotic sea. The fish prowled, the seaweed danced. I thought 5 crazy words. What do we do now? Shit. I reproached myself with a familiar spasm of self-contempt. I'm the captain. I'm not supposed to ask that question. I'm supposed to answer it. Didn't the mechs just do something that would kill thousands of people? I thought again about the mild and inaudible footfall of heedless humans. But to the world of ants, those footfalls were the thunder of gods. A thunder that battered their world with the antly analog of the apocalypse. I sat down and did and said nothing for about 10 minutes. Willie did not say a word, but I could sense him regarding me. For some reason, I could not meet his eyes. Ensign Steve, that's Timothy Steve, just 23, darkly handsome, just competent but not unduly so, and, one might as well say it, horny as a toad, was staring bewildered at the readouts in front of him, pumping data into his wired-up brain. While I sat silent and utterly unable to think of what to do next, the rest of the crew, except for the engineer, began shuffling onto the bridge, knowing what to do about as much as I did, but waiting for me to tell them what to do. Suddenly, I hated them all, and I asked myself again a question that had occurred to me literally hundreds of times since the government had inexplicably handed me this impossible command. Why the hell am I the captain of the Nautilus? I'm nothing but a goddamn auto mechanic. A failure. All of them. God damn them. Were looking at me, except for Willie, who brooded over the data stream bombarding his brain. How much information can one brain, no matter how upgraded, process before that brain burns out like an old-fashioned 20th century fuse? I cradled my chin in my hands and strove for an air of calm. "Willie, do we have any new orders?" "Negative, Captain," he replied, seemingly staring placidly out at space. But I knew that he was really staring at the ever-river-running data stream inside his own head. Date of birth. Stupid. My own thoughts. Pretty little word games to distract myself from my duties. Willie, the consummate professional, went on. "We are continuing with current course and speed. The estimated time of arrival is approximately 1 hour. I looked at the crew, who looked at me like a bunch of waxworks dummies. They were standing there in solemn silence, waiting to be told what to do. Perhaps it was my imagination, but I detected glints of contempt for me in their vacant, staring eyes, especially in the eyes of Lieutenant Tiernan. Cho-Hee Tiernan was 30 years old, and she was a crack antimatter engineer, a prodigy, brimming with confidence and contempt for her inferiors, who pretty much constituted the whole of the human race. The story goes that she was on her way to being made the youngest captain in the Navy when she unaccountably got stuck with this dead-end assignment. Now she lingered by a console near where Willie was standing, her black pinpoint eyes zeroing in on mine while her taut, feline, shapely form vibrated with inner thrumming tension. Her mouth was set like the slice of a razor across a sheet of paper. Neither smile nor frown. Nothing. Only the slight puckering furrows at the corners of her thin, horizontal lips betrayed some inner, smoldering emotion, suggesting that she was currently tasting something awful but trying not to let on. I knew that the bad taste in her mouth was me. I wanted to stand up, sweep my hand at the captain's chair like an MC introducing a contestant on a game show and say, "By all means, Lieutenant, take charge. It wasn't I who picked me instead of you for this mission. Personally, I can't find my ass with both hands. So by all means, take over." I wanted to say and do that, but I didn't. To do and say that might have taken some courage. Instead, my eyes scuttled away from hers, but I could still sense her heavy gaze upon me, and the silence in the room was oppressive. I drummed my fingers on the tabletop and nervously jiggled my toes. The drumming and jiggling was deafening. I heard a few throats nervously clearing. Finally, for want of something to say, I cleared my own throat and offered, "Until we know more about this and just what happened and what it means, mind mail whoever you want, family and friends, and then get back to your posts. You have exactly 5 minutes to attend to your personal affairs." My first order, and I felt the lobes of my ears burning, and it embarrassed me. They began silently shuffling out of the room. I got up and went to the head. I had never had to piss so bad. When I returned, the others were gone, except for Willie. He said, "Incoming encrypted confidential message, Captain. For your eyes only. Sending it to you now." A moment later, the President of the United States was inside my temporal lobes. I gasped.
Oh, ending on a cliffhanger. Isn't that the most annoying thing? So many questions remain, and there are only 85,475 words to go. What will our crew encounter? What does the President want them to do? Will they find peace and harmony on the edge of forever? Do I even know what that means? Thank you so much for watching, and remember, the secret to life is just out of reach.